Welcome to Jamaica Magazine. Coming up between the pages, Boyne sits with the National Security Advisor Major General Antony Anderson to discuss the issues and answers around the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations Act. Later, we'll provide you with need-to-know information regarding your child's basic school experience. I'm Adrian Atkinson. Stay tuned as the magazine unfolds.
The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information is committed to ensuring that every Jamaican child has the best learning environment to thrive and needs your cooperation to make the education system work successfully. That is why we are ensuring that all Jamaicans have full access to secondary education. Tuition is free of cost to you, but the government can't pay for everything, so do continue with your voluntary contributions. These contributions cover the expenses of co-curricular and sports activities and school development projects. We have also increased our support for PATH students. That's right, PATH students are not expected to make contributions, and they will be provided with 5 days of free lunches. We know that a hungry child cannot learn. The ministry has implemented a literature book rental program, free insurance and IDs for PATH students in high schools. This government cares for you. We believe that every child can learn. Every child must learn.
The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations Act is an important piece of legislation that seeks to contain crime while safeguarding the human rights of residents and promoting community development through social intervention initiatives. Issues and Answers is next.
Thanks for joining us for Issues and Answers. I'm Boyne. Today we want to talk about the Zones of Special Operations. That is the law that is designed to deal with Jamaica's crime problem, at least one aspect of the government's response. It is a means of clearing, holding, and building certain communities. The country's first National Security Advisor, Major General Antony Anderson, is our guest today, and he'll be talking to us about this new legislation. We thank you for your company. Major General, good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Could you tell us essentially what is this law designed to do, the zones of special operations?
Okay. Well, you seem pretty afraid with it, as you said, clear, build, and hold. But essentially, there are areas in Jamaica, and we're all aware that there are places where the rule of law has been absent, or pretty much absent, where people are afraid to go about their business. They're not allowed to go about their business normally. There are high levels of violence in those communities. Quite often a very strong criminal organization or multiple criminal gangs carrying out their activities within the space, and the normal citizen who lives there really, can't access the things that are normally expected in a state, and they live in a state of fear constantly. Our murder rate is very high, and yet it's not that geographically spread. The places where you find it are all over the island. But it's not spread widely. That's true. It's quite concentrated in different places. And so to treat with that particular aspect of the criminality and the high murder, it was thought to create an area that's manageable, where you can normalize a community and remove that control of criminal elements, and get in normal social services that are available to other communities who are not under this sort of condition, and reestablish a rule of law. It also, that will provide the foundation on which you can build by putting in the various services that other communities have that are usually absent from these communities.
Major General, one of the criticisms made about the law is the view that elements of the law were already in place. They were already in several places in the legislation. Therefore, why didn't government utilize what is already on the books rather than creating this new law? How would you give a rejoinder to that?
Well, I mean, the fact is that with any kind of law that requires an operational response, it's really important that the people who are actually responding can be familiar with the law, for instance, the provisions of it, etc. Now, if it's spread all over in a number of different laws, it's going to be far more difficult for those people to understand what they're actually to do under these various laws. So it brings those laws together. So for first part. The second part is that it's introduced some protections that aren't in any law. And I don't know of another law that speaks to specifically that although you have a law enforcement aspect to it, you actually have a social intervention in the act.
So that's new.
That's new.
Yes.
It requires certain levels of accountability in the act. And the act is set up in a way that can leverage an all-of-government response.
How does the law protect from human rights abuses, Major General?
Well, I mean, the law requires, first thing, the selection of the commanders on the ground. There's a requirement in the law for them to have received human rights training. There's a requirement for the teams working in the zone, the joint force, to receive that kind of training. I know that has happened. You've seen the pictures in the media,
right.
etc.
Yes.
So that has been ongoing to prepare people to operate within the zone. And just the philosophy, the philosophy of the act is clear that this is not targeting a community, it's targeting criminals who are holding communities to ransom. And so, you know...
So it's not a matter of the security forces going in with brute force and knocking down doors and so on.
No, that's not the expectation. To the extent that, of course, depending on the resistance they receive, they're going to have to respond, clearly. But it's always a thing that you have to protect civilians. People not engaging you, you have to protect them and even sometimes operate with restraint because they're around, etc. So the idea is to go in a manner that leaves the criminals the least opportunity possible to carry out what they want to do, and provide as much protection for the population there.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that's just the initial entry. There's going to be, the type of intervention is going to have to change over time, from how you go if you're expecting somebody to actually enter into conflict with criminals, as opposed to just doing normal community policing. So it has to transition quite quickly into heavy community policing. I say heavy, just numbers-wise. It's going to take a lot of people to do it right.
So the clearing is just one aspect, but the holding and the building.
Right, the holding and building are the bigger chunks of it.
Issues.
Yeah.
The country's national security advisor, Major General Antony Anderson, is speaking to us about the zones of special operations. He has more to tell us when we come back from this very brief break.
When criminals disagree, they seek revenge. Murder, arson, rape, whatever causes terrible suffering. It doesn't matter who gets hurt. Women, children, and the elderly, they are the main targets. Don't support the criminals. Don't cover up for them. Don't take their money. Take a stand now for the right of our women and children to be free from fear and abuse. Silence brings violence.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
National Security Advisor and member of the National Security Council, Major General Antony Anderson, is our guest on Issues and Answers, speaking more specifically about the zones of special operations. Tell us about life in communities that are under this special legislation, Major General. How will life be? Will there be major disruptions? What should we expect? What should citizens in those areas expect on a day-to-day basis?
Right. Obviously, there's an expectation, especially initially, of a heavy security force presence. There will clearly be some restrictions of movement initially.
Can people go to work?
Well, people will have to go to
They
work.
have to go to work. All right. Okay.
But it's that. But there will be some restrictions of movement. It'll be controlled movement. It'll also the entrances and exits to the zones will probably be, not probably, more than likely be controlled.
So people will be searched.
There will be searches of people, vehicles, etc. Because what you don't want is the weapons to move elsewhere.
People to come in.
Because remember, the point is that we have to keep going back to, there's a reason why a zone is being declared. And the reason anywhere that a zone is declared, it should be obvious to people that there has been a problem there. And the problem, at the root of the problem, are guns and the people who own them and what they've been doing with them. So we don't need those guns to move to another community to do the same thing. So even if the people leave.
Yes, because you expect that they're going to flee. They're going to expect that the zone is coming and they're going to flee.
Yes, you'll expect.
But they'll send back for the guns.
Well, also they were going to want to get them out. They know that they're going to be searched for, and so in the process of search, they don't want them discovered. I mean, these are, for a criminal organization, this is one of your major assets.
Tools of trade.
Tools of trade. And then, of course, if you find these guns, their ballistic signature can tell a story as well. So that.
So the searches will go on. But the areas won't be under permanent curfew, though, Major General.
No, there's nothing like a permanent curfew.
Permanent curfew.
They'll be curfewed as required.
As required, yes.
And they'll be assessed. There's a very tight reporting schedule. There's a tight accountability framework.
Every 10 days.
Every 10 days, a report comes to the council. And so it's going to be monitored. Obviously, there's a very keen attention to what is happening in the zone. And I think all sort of well-thinking people who see this happening want it to happen well. They really want, I mean, all of us, I think.
Yes.
And one of the challenges, of course, is that all of the people who are discussing on either side, and I know many of them, for both sides of this issue, all of them want the same end result.
That's true.
I think we all do.
That is true.
Other than probably the people who are
causing
the problem, which is that people can live in these communities, that they can realize their own ambitions, that there is support to them to realize that, that they have access to basic services, that they don't have to be moved out of their house because a criminal wants it, or have to pay rent for the house that they own to somebody because they're a gang.
Or to send out their daughters,
Well,
the evil men, yes.
So I don't think anybody wants this, even if we're have differences on how we should achieve
Methodology.
it. I think this method can work, and to the extent that you can put in safeguards, they have been put in. We'll have to see when they execute it. Everything lives or dies on the execution.
And the National Security Council will be monitoring closely, be watching the actual operations.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, a council, at the level of council, if they're getting a 10-day report from a specific zone, that means they're really interested.
Yes.
It's not something that is, you fire and forget. You've declared it and then people get on with it.
Yes.
This one, the way the legislation is written, requires close attention. The Prime Minister has really stepped out on this one and put himself at the center of it, which is actually quite brave. but also it's indicative of how seriously he takes
And he has to
this
make a
issue.
report to Parliament.
Right, if he wants to renew it,
14,
and so on. So he makes reports to Parliament and so on. So, to the extent, if you really were to go through it, there's an attempt to address most concerns, and still have something that you can practically work with.
Yes.
You know.
What are the responsibilities of residents within the zone? What would be your word to them, Major General?
Well, I'd say that one of the things they should do is cooperate with the joint force. They recognize that they're there to actually help.
In their interest.
In their interest. And, you know, if they ask for your identification, it's because they're trying to ascertain that you're not one of the people they want to separate you.
Who are threatening
Right.
you, yes.
Because, you know, too often criminal organizations and communities get conflated into one thing. And so an action against a criminal is action against a community when it's not. The fact of the matter is that when you get a chance to, and you speak with people in communities when they're away
from the cameras,
they don't want to be in the circumstance they're in. No community wants to be run by criminal organizations. Nobody wants to be live in fear and in fear for their children. People don't want that.
Yes.
And then beyond that basic fear of life and harm to yourself and your family, then beyond that, you want to be able to access normal things. You want a road. You know, you want street lights.
yes.
You want a school. You know, you want water. You know, you want to become normal, a normal part of everything. You want to have access to training. So one part of it, obviously, after 5 days with the Social Intervention Committee being set up, and that intervention committee clearly has persons on it from the community, but it's ready to work with the community to look at what the training opportunities that need to be delivered there. The HOPE program will be there. You know, Heart Trust is geared to intervene if necessary in the zone to provide training. And the various agencies of state, whether it's JSIF, SDC, to line up in a way that hasn't really been done before. Being led from the center, which is really out of the Office of the Prime Minister, that this intervention can be lined up in a way to create sustainable change, because that's really what we want in the end. Otherwise, we'll be back here again.
So you expect that in the end, the communities will be better, tangibly.
Tangibly, and have normal leadership structures, and look about their own and determine their own future. Because once it gets going, and that the community realizes that it's possible, that the life that other people talk about is possible for them.
That's right.
And they get a taste of it, and it starts to work, and the support is there, then they will start generating their own ideas and their own way of doing things. You know, I mean, Augustown is a classic case of that. But you know, we hopefully will have that, and of course, once the presence is there, the idea is that you have a sufficient presence that you don't have a return of criminals to further intimidate the community.
Yes. Major General, thank you very much. I'm sure I'll be talking to you again soon. National Security Advisor, Major General Antony Anderson, speaking to us about the zones of special operations. We thank you for your company. Hope you'll be back with us next week. Until then, Ian Boyne wishing you a pleasant day.
We are children and we have rights. We have a right to be
protected,
provided for,
and included. Don't beat me up, don't belittle me, and please don't molest me.
I am under 13. I should not be working for a living. That is child labor. It is illegal.
Stop leaving me alone. I am too young to provide for myself. I need your guidance.
Protect our nation's children. They have rights too. To learn more about children's rights, call or visit the offices of the Child Development Agency.
Not treat him rough, your teacher. Him is a sickly child. As you touch him hard, he make nice. Some people say him poil. Words from Miss Lou's poem, Good Morning Teacher. Sending your child to basic school for the first time can be a nervous experience. For peace of mind, watch this next feature.
The first few years of life are critical to a child's success in later years. That's why there's major emphasis placed on developing their young minds to take their place as the creators of tomorrow's future. As parents, we want only the best for our children, and getting the best education is no different. So we went on a fact-finding mission and unearthed some tips for you to consider when thinking about the first stage of your child's academic life.
So firstly, you should ensure that the institution you have chosen for your children, that institution has registered with the ECC or is preparing for registration with the Early Childhood Commission.
As the lead agency responsible for early childhood development, the ECC regulates schools that provide instructions for children 0 to 8 years. And when an institution is registered with the Early Childhood Commission, parents are assured that the school abides by the rigid requirements set by the Ministry of Education.
The first thing you want to look at is this a school that caters to the holistic development of the child. And in saying that, it means they have a sound academic background, but academics is not enough. You know, we need the physical development, the emotional development, the intellectual development.
Children love to play, so there should be adequate play area. When you look at the curriculum that the student uses, you should see enough time for rest. Yes, rest is important. Play, and also to find out that the teachers are equipped.
We need to have qualified, trained staff for the early childhood child. We need to know that they are warm and caring, they're friendly. Everybody wants to know that the teacher is approachable. You can talk to the teacher about whatever problems you may have. You know, sometimes, especially new parents, are very anxious.
Early childhood teachers should have attained at least levels 1 and 2 certification in early childhood development from the Heart Trust and at least 5 JSC subjects.
You need to look at the teacher pupil ratio. That's another consideration. If there are too many children to one teacher, the chances are less of each child making the progress they should. If the child is quick, they might be okay. But your child that needs a little more individual attention could be lost in a big group. So you need to look. I would suggest at least 1 to 20, one teacher to 20 students.
When you go into the school, ensure that the surroundings are clean and everything around you, they are sensitive. So the children will look at things that jump out at them. And also if you feel uncomfortable and your child says that he's uncomfortable at school, something must be wrong. So ensure you take these things into consideration.
Find a school that has an environment that's conducive to learning. There are certain factors. Is it attractive, stimulating? Is it safe? Is there proper material for the children to play with? Is the environment clean? Those are factors that will affect learning. So you need to know that the environment is conducive to learning.
One of the first things I did was visit the school often, taking the child with me and also enroll her in the summer program. So at least 2 days a week she would come to get to know her teacher, to get to know the surrounding.
I have seen where those who have come to summer school, they are able to fit in much better come September, because when they come in September, they see their friend that they met in summer school, so they are able to adjust. The transition is much easier.
When looking for an institution to send your preschooler, it's also important that you know what meals are provided, as proper nutrition ensures they'll function throughout the day.
If lunch is prepared, you can ask to take a look at the kitchen if you visit the school.
We offer proper nutrition here, where the children would be given a hot meal every day.
Most times parents will pay for the meal, but what do they get? You need to know that they're getting a balanced meal each day, and that also they're having it, because you could easily pay for it and the children are not eating it.
Going to school for the first time can be stressful for the child as well as the parents.
Children, they're going to cry regardless of what. But what you'll find sometimes parents themselves crying too, and this makes the child so uncomfortable. So what you have to do as a parent, try and tough it out and encourage a child. What we also encourage, if there's a toy that the child loves, like a blanket, you can give the child a blanket. Or you can give the child a photograph of you.
Children are our future. It's important that we nurture them in every way possible. So once your child's school year begins, you should play your part in continuing the learning process at home.
The ministry's curriculum now is big on parental involvement. So you find that the homework that we give, we know the children can't do it on their own, so parents must assist. So that is big. And we also want that parent to be involved in the school life, not just send the child to school, come to school, find out what is happening from teacher.
You can't be an absentee parent. Some parents will just, I pay, I send my child to school, and that's it. That is not enough. We find that children most times who make more stride and, are the ones that the parents show that interest.
After the child or the children have been taught here in the days, we are expecting the parents to do a reinforcement with them so that learning continues even at home and they will understand whatever was being taught.
Get involved overall. Check them, when I reach home, check the books, ensure that they get homework and do the homework, and all of these little things. And that will go a long way in ensuring that the child progresses through school.
Come out to the PD. That's where you have your voice, you have your say. This is your investment. You're investing in your child here, so you need to come out, say what it is, make plans for the school, be a part of the school in its entirety.
Our children are our responsibility. Let's give them a bright start.
Agriculture is one of the main planks on which we can hope to achieve economic growth and development. And if agriculture is one of the main planks that will determine our growth, then youth is an essential part of that productive process. It is the youth that we must turn our attention to.
I don't know where life will lead me, but I know where I've been. I can't say what life will show me, but I know what I've seen. Tried my hand at love and friendship, but all that is past and gone. This little boy is moving on. Jimmy Cliff. I hope you found our program informative. Send your feedback to jamaicamagazine@jis.gov.jm. Stay informed on our social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also visit our website, jis.gov.jm, for more information. On behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.